We complete service requests 100% of the time within 48 hours and 75% of the time within 24 hours. We do this on 4,000 units in over 25 cities and in 2 states. I have a 10-step process that breaks down the very simple steps that we do with a lot of intensity that leads to these kind of speed results. All right, step number 1. All of our service requests go into AppFolio and filter to our service techs. Got to use technology. We're a tech-forward company, and if the resident does not feel comfortable being able to put a service request through AppFolio, then they call it in and our team puts it into AppFolio. So everything runs through AppFolio. That's step number 1. You've got to have a mainframe system. Step number 2. Each service tech has a territory, and all requests are easy to find for their specific territory as they come in from the tenants. If they called in, again, we put that through the system. This is important. Our service techs don't just cover one property, and our service techs don't rehab units. They only fix things. So they can cover about a 500 unit geographic territory, and all service requests that come in from the tenant go right to the service tech. They don't go to this leader. They go right to the specific service tech. Step number 3, each service tech has to respond to every request within 24 hours. We have auto scripts for this, but they start them with the tenant's name. Communication is key and it enables speed. This is easy, guys, especially if you have a rule of thumb of when your service tech should be slowing down to do this. But when those service requests comes in, they're required to be able to text that resident within 24 hours, starting with the resident's name, and it's a simple script and it can say something super nice, just received your request, right? I'm on top of it. This is important because most people are impatient and they're wondering if somebody's actually looking at their garbage disposal that got broke or their leaky toilet. Just by being able to respond to them quickly really helps heighten the overall service experience. Step number 4, every morning, every service tech reviews all requests by time, urgency level, and location, then builds a plan for the day. They do this at 7 a.m., noon, and 4 p.m. 4 p.m. sets up the next day. So think about this, right? You can do it more often, but you gotta have separate rules of thumb. And for our service techs, this makes a lot of sense, right? At 4 p.m., you're texting the residents, right, from the day, and you're looking at different ways to organize your next day. And that is super important because the next day, starting at 7 a.m., they've already contacted most of these residents and they know exactly where they're gonna go. And overnight, any requests that were put in, because let's be honest, after 4 p.m., a lot of people are getting done with work, there might be 10, 20 more service requests that fall in to their territory. By stopping at that first apartment before they fix anything and texting all those residents, they're kind of prioritizing, organizing, and setting up their future days, which really helps them with the speed. Step number 5. Now, I'm doing a video on this one as well, but the experience matters. Or they always knock on the door with a really strong greeting at my company. The greeting is easy. You smile, you say the tenant's name, you say yours, you ask to take your shoes off or add booties. Then they walk in and they give one compliment, right? Just a compliment anything, and then they just do their job and they fix whatever service request that the resident put in. Fixing the garbage disposal by working neat and clean, and then they leave. That's step number 5. Step number 6, and this is important, as soon as they're walking out and they get back to the car, they do not go to the next unit. They do not go to the next property. They complete the work order in AppFolio. This is important because that's a timestamp, right? From the time that the resident put in the order starts the trigger of 48 hours, and from the time that is complete. So now this is important that they complete the work order. Step number 7, a weekly scorecard is sent from the service tech leader to all the service techs in Slack. Each service tech is scored on speed, on experience, and on budgets. Daily recognition is shared on Slack so that all the service techs can see that as well. Any good process, guys, has a scoreboard that's visible, right? This helps each scoreboard or service tech know on the scoreboard who's doing great, who's not doing great. This helps each individual service tech know who to call maybe for advice. This helps each individual service tech know how they're trending for their bonuses. Super important to report the results, guys. And it's obviously awesome to have a leader above these service techs that can share out almost every day around 7, noon, and 4 different experience scores that are coming in very high from a recognition standpoint. Within the scoreboard, we measure budgets. So this is the ability for a service tech to be able to keep the work in-house. It's one thing to be really quick, but if you're always farming it out to the licensed plumber, the licensed electrician, and having them come in and be able to do it, obviously they're not going to make their budget within their territory. So this incentivizes quality, do it right the first time so you don't have to go back and blow your budget, and in-house work. Number 2, speed. Covered this one already. They get full amount of points if they can get it all done within 48, bonus within 24. And lastly, experience. With Appfolio, every single time you close out a work order, it sends an experience survey with the resident, and the resident can take that experience survey. This is how we know if they're performing and doing a great job and following our 3-step process. Step 8, a monthly scoreboard is sent out. Monthly scoreboards are used for us to help bonus our service techs accordingly. If they're hitting different metrics that are really, really good, or the desired metric we sent, then they would be able to get paid. This also helps with the number of units, because the more units that they own or manage for their territory increases their bonus. So now instead of just focusing on a small territory and being really good with speed, this incentivizes them to take on bigger and bigger territories. Step number 9, service techs leader calls and recognizes service techs doing an amazing job. We also crown a service tech of the month. It's a traveling trophy, guys. It's a pride thing. This guy gets to put it on his van, on his company car, all month, right? Gets to brag about it, gets to bring home. How many months in a row can you keep that trophy with you versus going to a different service tech? And the last step, and this is really important, the service tech leader calls or most likely shows up in person to the service tech's territory and coaches for any service tech that is not meeting performance, right? This is really, really important because nobody wants to show up to work and do a bad job. So if they're missing on experience, our service tech leader is probably going to show up, not just coach them, but reevaluate expectations and training. And might even walk into some units with the service tech to make sure that we can coach them and that they're doing the 3-step process, starting with the greeting, compliment, and doing your job, right? If it's a speed thing, our leader is going to show up, and it's going to show up probably a few times at 7 a.m., at noon, and at 4 p.m. just to see how the service tech is organizing and prioritizing their day. Step 10 is about really taking the time to make sure that expectations are clear, they're trained, and then you're having performance-based conversations that help a tech be able to get better week over week, month over month. That's a 10-step process, guys, with how to simply increase your speed, hopefully your budgets and your experience at the same time. And the last 3 are really, really critical because it's a lot about visibility, it's a lot about coaching, and it's a lot about leadership, which enhances and pushes all 10 steps further.